Here's what happened, guys. You are building the future. Whether you're aware of it or not, you play a pivotal role in shaping the future of our country. There are 36 million small businesses here in the US that employ 45% of the private workforce. That has a big impact on our future. And we cannot forget that even in the face of so many psychological operations we've experienced over the decades as Americans. And for whatever reason, for these psychological operations, it could have been to distract us. It could have been to divide us, or to make it really hard for us to come together on problems as Americans to be able to move forward as a country. But for whatever reason, we as small business owners and as Americans have to remind ourselves that we can fight for what is beautiful, good, and true. We can preserve what is great about our country. We can preserve our individual rights like our freedom of speech. And when things don't make sense, we can get curious and ask questions and seek out the truth and be able to share that truth. Because the truth, it can be uncomfortable, it can be overwhelming, and it can even be shocking at times. And it can give us peace in understanding what's going on and how we can move forward and navigate into the future. So welcome back to the show. Happy hump day. Happy Wednesday. We're getting into it today. With this ownership series, I got a few episodes left. And what I want to do is share with you some history about our government that I think is really important to connect to the conversation I've been having with you about taxes and how I believe we would be shocked if we actually saw behind the curtains of how much money it actually really takes to run our government. That would be much less than how much we're paying in taxes. And so we can question, it's not crazy to question if certain taxes make sense anymore. Like I think of the hospitality tax or sales tax, depending on what state you're in. And also on a federal level, looking at the U.S. tax code that's over 4,000 pages. How do we simplify that down to less than 400 pages or 4 pages? Because we are in a moment in history where we are experiencing massive change. And we're noticing that. And that can create a lot of chaos and create a lot of mess. We can point to the war with Iran right now, the U.S. national debt over $38 trillion, how Gen Z is the most indebted generation for their age group in the history of the U.S. And with massive change, we can move forward and be able to, for our country, create a better future. And so it's not crazy to question things. And with what I'm going to share with you, it's two pieces of our history. One is the MKUltra program, and the other one is Operation Northwoods. Both of them, what they did for me was wake me up to the reality of the country that I live in and what is going on around me. And it even caused me to join a book club. And so the book I recommend is Chaos by Tom O'Neill. I actually have not read it yet, but I've just listened into the past discussions about this book. And I already know that it's one that I got to recommend to you, and I'm going to take the time to go through it. But it talks about MKUltra. And what I want to do is share with you, I'm going to share with you the Wikipedia page for the MKUltra so we can go through this together. But what this could do is help question, where's our taxpaying dollars going? Where is the money being spent? Because again, going back to the U.S. national debt is over $38 trillion, and who's going to have to pay for that? Well, it goes back to the taxpayer. It goes back to us. And it's not crazy to want to question things and understand what's going on. So MKUltra program, it was an illegal human experimentation program designed and undertaken by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, to develop procedures and identify drugs that could be used in altering human behavior. So it began in 1953, and it was halted in 1973. My belief is that it's still going on in some different form, but and you can take the time to go through all this, but this also may be the first time of you even hearing about MKUltra. And I remember the first time I heard about it, I was like, wait, what? This happens? This is something our government did? And it goes back to the truth. It can be shocking at times. But what it can do is give us a better understanding of what's going on and what we're having to face for the challenges, and making sure that we are aware of what goes on in our country. So this is just one example. And again, it's got its own Wikipedia page for you to check it out. And so this is a program, or this was a project that the CIA had And with that, it gets you to question, okay, for our taxpaying dollars, what else is our taxpayer dollars funding? And we can push back as small business owners for accountability. It is not absurd or unreasonable to do that as Americans, because it goes back to the reminder that the government is there to serve us, the American people. The other one I want to share with you is Operation Northwoods. So let me get this up. So we'll go through it again. It has its own Wikipedia page too. So Operation Northwoods. And again, this is coming from our government. It was a proposed false flag operation which originated within the Department of Defense in 1962. The proposal was called for CIA operatives to both stage and commit acts of terrorism against U.S. military and civilian targets, blaming them on Cuban government, and use them to justify a war against Cuba. Yeah. And you can keep going through the page and check it out. But this is part of our history. And it goes back to, as small business owners, as Americans, it is not crazy to want to know where your taxpaying dollars are going and to question whether it makes sense to be spending this amount in taxes. And it's important for us when we look at our elected officials to make sure that they are serving our best interest as American people. And that's a question that we have to ask ourselves is, do we believe that? Do we believe that politicians have the best interest of the American people? And really, unfortunately, the answer to start is no. And it's really difficult to accept that and to take in that truth. But then with that truth, we can get a better understanding of the challenges that we have to deal with. And so when it comes back to this renaissance, that America's future is a small business renaissance, we have to remind ourselves of where are there certain taxes that just don't make sense anymore. That could be a hospitality tax in your local city. That could be a sales tax. And where can we then push back and make sure that we are channeling this massive change that we're experiencing right now in a way that can help better our country moving forward? And that could be eliminating certain taxes. That could be taking the 4,000 US tax code and simplifying that down to 4 pages. It is not crazy to do that. And it's really important to help you to realize that the world we're living in now, this country that we're living in now, wasn't always like this. You think of something like the internet. The foundations began in the 1960s, which is interesting. 1960s is an interesting decade for a lot of things happening here. But it was in the 1960s, U.S. Department of Defense, ARPANET project. And then I think of social media, like when I was in... Oh, where was I? I was in middle school, if I'm remembering right. Let me think back to the years. Like in middle school, Facebook launched 2024 or 2004. And then even with certain taxes, I think of the hospitality tax. If you're living in South Carolina, hospitality tax didn't have one until 1997. And then we've talked about security cameras. That was back in 1927 when it was first invented, and then didn't come later on for the first street cameras. It didn't happen until the 1960s. 1960s, interesting for the decade. But these things haven't always been here. And moving into the future, we can take and preserve what is great about our country, but then we can make sure that we are, with the change, we are raising the standard in different areas that could continue to help preserve our individual rights, like our freedom of speech, and being able to make sure that we are fighting for what is beautiful, good, and true. But what this series is about is also taking ownership of how you critically think about our problems in this country, how to recognize that this hasn't been always the way things have been. And what we are hearing on the mainstream, we don't have to take that as a definitive fact of that's going to be the future. We don't. We can actually help shape the future of our country. Because when we think of all the challenges that are out there, all the mess, the chaos, I, as a small business owner, I know that, especially conversations I've had with our small business owners, I know that, you want a better life for yourself, for your family, for your community. I want to be able to go on a date with my girlfriend and experience a new restaurant. I want to be able on Sunday to watch football and take a break from work. I know that there is so much commonality between us as Americans for what we want: a better quality of life, better opportunities, make sure that we have clean food, and make sure too that we're able at night to feel safe walking around our greatest cities in America, to not have to lock our doors all the time, to have happier marriages. Like, there is a lot of commonality here, and we got to be reminded of how united we really are to be able to move forward with these problems. But we cannot also disregard and ignore what has happened in our history and understand the challenges that we're facing and how to hold accountable to our government. Because again, it goes back to that reminder: the government is there to serve us, the American people. And we have to make sure as small business owners, as Americans, we don't forget that. So I'll see you guys tomorrow.